Steven Crowder has been banned or suspended, I believe. He got a hard strike from YouTube. And he's complaining about it, in fact. In fact, you can see it right here. Look at him. A hard strike from YouTube. And wow, this is terrifying. We covered specific documented instances of rape. YouTube says not allowed. All parents should take note. If you believe in the insane notion of biological sex, you will be silenced. More to come. Hashtag fight like hell. Wow. I mean, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? If Steven Crowder was banned merely for calling out instances of rape, I mean, that would be a disgusting instance of censorship that needs to be talked about and needs to be fought back against, no matter your political orientation. Unless he's full of shit, which he is. Steven Crowder was suspended for YouTube for hate speech. The story he was pushing was fake. The misinfo came from an anti-trans organization. Conservative YouTuber Steven Crowder is once again waging a war with YouTube. On Wednesday night, the internet personality announced on his Twitter account that his channel has received a hard strike for a segment YouTube says target the transgender community. This means that Crowder is suspended from uploading new content or live streaming on his YouTube for 1 week. Wow, this is terrifying. We already read this. Crowder was referring to a segment he did alleging that a transgender person in a woman's prison sexually assaulted and impregnated a fellow inmate in California. In January, a state law known as SB 132 that allows transgender people to be placed in an incarceration facility that is consistent with their gender identity went into effect. However, no one in California's women's prisons had become pregnant while in custody. According to a California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's spokesperson, there are pregnant inmates in CDCR custody, but they were pregnant when they were admitted to the state prison, said Terry Thornton, Deputy Press Secretary of California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, said in a statement provided to Mashable. Thornton reiterated, no one became pregnant while incarcerated as a result of implementation of SB 132. Mashable reached out to Crowder for comment via the press inquiry form on his website, but did not get a response prior to publishing. The disproven claim, repeated by Crowder in September, video has been making the viral rounds for months prior. In August, PolitiFact debunked a viral Instagram post that was sharing the same information. So, to be clear, though, the organization that he is getting this information from is the Women's Liberation Front, and I quote, the group has tweeted in July that they heard from 7 different people inside the facility, and this assault had occurred. The Women's Liberation Front is made up of anti-trans activists opposed to gender identity and transgender rights legislation. So, who are we supposed to trust? The actual spokespeople of the corrections facilities in California? The officers saying there's no instances of this at all being recorded? The multiple articles on the internet debunking said claims with no physical, photographic, or any evidence at all being shown that someone was raped by a transgender person and that created a pregnancy. There's no evidence of it whatsoever. And the only source out there available just so happens to be an anti-trans organization. Which, of course, Crowder accepted at face value and immediately reported. Now, I know that the large swath of people on the internet that constantly talk about how CNN lies and MSNBC lies and mainstream news lies to support, and how we need to go out and support alt media, is going to be outraged at the story and be sure to give Steven Crowder a good talking to as he continues to not admit that he lied about the story. I'm sure we're going to see it any day now. I'm sure Rob Noor's video on it is going to come out any second. But I want to talk about why this lie was made up. Why did people lie about this in particular? And the reason's simple. The boogeymen and boogie women they make up when it comes to the trans community don't exist. They want, and when I say they, I talk about right-wing media moguls, right-wing media in general, right-wing commentators. They want their narrative to be fulfilled. And the narrative that's been hit on for years is that, and this is their narrative, not mine, that men pretending to be women are going to go into women's bathrooms. And once they're in women's bathrooms, they're going to prey on your children. They're going to prey on your wives. And there's going to be rapes and sexual assaults and just terrible, 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 terrible things. It's going to be awful. It's going to spike all these rapes and sexual assaults. And that's the narrative that's pushed. And then you ask, is there any statistical evidence to back this up? Any. Obviously, if the implementation of these gender-neutral bathrooms or allowing trans women to go into women's bathrooms and allowing trans men to go into men's bathrooms was to occur and this was going to spike rapes, there would be some statistical evidence to prove and show this. There isn't. Anyone who can provide me said evidence, I'd love to meet you, because I have yet to meet a single person who can provide me with evidence. Now, once that story was beaten to death, then it moved on to prisons, because then people started to have the discussion about, what about trans inmates? Where do they go? And of course, left-wing activists were like, well, we believe trans women are women, so they should go in women's facilities, and trans men are men, so they go into men's facilities. And then what happened? Well, if we do that, then these trans women, who are really not women but men, are going to go in there and they're going to rape and they're going to pillage and they're going to do terrible things and they're going to prey on the female prisoners. First time I've ever heard Fox News and Tucker Carlson actually speak up for the rights of and the protection of prisoners, by the way. But apparently now prisoners' rights matters. And then we're like, okay, show us the instances of this. Is there any statistical evidence, any evidence that this is occurring? Not only is there no statistical evidence that this is occurring in women's prisons, they can't even provide us with instances of this happening. To the point where they have to make up these stories. They have to pretend it's happening.
Occurred is occurred.
They don't need to go to the corrections officials and ask them. They don't need to fact check their stories. They just hear from an anti-trans organization that has clear biases against trans people. There was this terrible thing where a trans woman came in here, raped someone. Not only did they rape somebody, but that person got pregnant due to said rape. Oh my God, what a terrible scenario to be in. And Steven Crowder pumped it out. And YouTube rightfully saw that as disinformation targeting the trans community and took it down. And he had the balls to not only double down on that, but then say, I am the hero standing up for victims. He's the hero, guys. Look at him. He's standing up for victims. Look, there is enough instances of rape and sexual assault in this country that you don't need to make up a rape in a women's prison. If you care about sexual abuse in prisons, there's enough instances of it, Crowder, that you can take a million different stories to report on. And talk about what we need to do to change that culture within prisons. But instead, he goes with the made-up story, goes with the fake story, and goes with that. And he just keeps going. Do you think he's ever going to say, I was wrong? No. Once he's able to re-upload on YouTube, he's going to re-upload on YouTube, and he's never going to admit fault. And there's going to be this information out there for his audience that they consumed it, and he was martyred to put it out there, and they're going to continue to believe it. If this was a pandemic of trans women preying on women and children, by the way, the women and children shtick, like the idea that they're going to prey on little girls in bathrooms, that's just repackaged homophobia from a time long gone. Queerphobia of the finest ilk. Like, if we go onto YouTube right now, I've shown this a million times, but anti-gay PSA. Beware, boys beware. And this was produced with the corporation of the police department of the Inglewood Unified School District. In this whole documentary here,
The following Saturday, they went fishing together. By now, they were using first names. Ralph said it was more friendly.
This whole documentary is basically trying to classify homosexuals as pedophiles. And it's a sickness, where homosexuality is a sickness that men catch, where they then prey on boys, on children.
Jimmy hadn't enjoyed himself so much in a long time. Then during lunch, Ralph showed him some pornographic pictures. Jimmy knew he shouldn't be interested, but, well, he was curious. What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex. But
it's repackaged queerphobia. It's just the idea that queer people are here to prey on your children. Think of the children. Oh God, the children. Because what is a better way to demonize a community than suggest that they are out to harm someone as a group of people as weak and defenseless as children, which is a group that everyone loves. Everyone likes kids. So continuing that old trope, Steven Crowder has continued it here. And not only has he continued it here, he gets punished for spreading disinformation, and now he's martyring himself, as in he was struck down because he stood up for victims. He didn't, though. He didn't. He just lied.